Hello and welcome back. This is David from the Personal Finance Squad. We are going into Chapter 5, the grocery bill. And why do we have a chapter just for the grocery bill? Because in many cases it can be the highest single largest expense item in your budget. I would suspect that it's probably no lower than third in most budgets. Grocery bill is variable. It can change on a monthly basis in terms of the things that you buy. And there's so many things that you purchase. That's what makes it more difficult. However, we budget to a fixed yearly amount, so that way we are going to do that eventually in this chapter, because that's the way we budget. As we get through this, we'll follow and see what Jasper ended up choosing to do, and again, you will have to perform your own exercise as well after this chapter. So we already pointed out about the expense. Could be the largest, and you can see down here we're looking at a grid from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Shows some nice pieces of information in here. You can see the lowest range is $629 to $1,244 a month. And that is, of course, for this family of four couple. That's your basic family setup, right? Your nuclear family of mom and a dad, two kids. You can also see it's ages 19 to 50. Oftentimes kids are getting into the older range at that point at age 50. This is when the budget is at its highest. What it's also done is broke down to some ways of saying some people are more thrifty, and you see the ranges here all the way up to liberal. Liberal's like, I don't really worry about what I spend, I'm just buying what I feel like buying. So you can certainly see the ranges here that a male between 19 and 50 certainly costs more than a child from 9 to 11, and a female, which makes sense, typically doesn't eat as much as a man does. And then families of two, you can see right here that families of two are just two people, so that's probably why they're more liberal. Likely, they do not have kids or anything else to deal with, or at least at this point from age 51 to 7, you might have kids who are grown or in college, out of the house, things like that. But nevertheless, their bills tend to be a little higher. It is conceivable to say that they probably could afford more. Now, relatively speaking, we go back down here, though, and we get back to the nuclear family of four, almost double. $1,244 from the high end to the low end. You can see here when your kids start getting a little older, 6 to 8, 9 to 11, they start costing more, because there's points, especially as they get into teenagers, which we don't really see in this graph here, probably the bill would even be higher, because when your kids are going through puberty, they're going to eat a ton of food because their bodies need all that fuel to grow. In general, food prices rise year after year, resulting in constant monitoring of the budget, and that's what I was getting at in the beginning of what we were talking about. So, we're a global economy, and so if we import or export things and there's a problem somewhere with bananas, then maybe they cost more because there's a shortage. If oranges freeze in Florida because they had some unexpected frost, the supply could go lower and they could cost more because there's less on hand and people need to make their money. They need to try to get as much as they can for their crop. So you can see, for example, we talk about corn prices in 2011 hit a record at $8 a bushel, which is equal to 8 gallons. So it's the same kind of example. So these are just generalities with food, but like anything else, all it has to do with supply and demand. Okay, so the next major piece we want to get into, and this is really how you manage your budget. This is how you keep your costs in check and understand what it is that you want to eat. Because if you do a food calendar, what you're saying is that you're not only you're tracking what you're eating and planning it out, but you'll probably tend to eat certain things over and over again. So these calendars get you in the flow of what you like to eat and probably what it's going to cost you within reason. This takes work like anything else. Now, this is not so much the 12-month plan in terms of the way we budget out like bowling or utilities or childcare, but you will run through a 12-month cycle. What this is based upon is an example of a week. You can see right here, the whole purpose is structured. The structured guide to remain tasked with commitments. Food calendars to create a plan for each day based on a minimum of 1 week or as long as a month. But you got to think of it this way. You buy food for a month, you're probably going to max out your cabinet space. There's no real estate in there to work with. So how often people shop, it differs, but to say that someone doesn't go to the grocery store at least once a week is, if you certainly have a family, that's pretty normal. So the idea is to create a plan for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because then you know what you have on hand, and then you can go plan that out and say, I'm going to go purchase this, and then you're going to know what it's going to cost you, right? But in this case, we're only going to list out the dinners. Dinners cost more than breakfast or lunch typically, so we can leave other parts of the budget to go pay for the other things. We just want to show this example of here just based on dinner, but you can certainly go plan out all 3 phases if you want. You know, another thing too that my wife and I have done this over the years, when we have a food calendar, our little hidden thing is that you get a very wide variety of meal choices. Granted, it does demand more ingredients for cooking. However, once you build up the ingredients and items like spices, for example, and vanilla and sugar and salt, things of that nature, don't go back and buy those every day. So that does help. So again, when you have a variety of meal choices, you will at least not eat the same old thing often, and that's a good thing. So let's go down here and look at our little sample grid. There's apps out there that you can use to do such things that I'm doing here. And again, you can do it in your own grid. You can go even pull up a calendar in Excel somewhere based off the internet. Someone will have one already pre-made for you. And you can just download that and you can fill it in just like it looks here. So Jasper's a single father. So he can't always cook. It's tough. He's got to pick his child up from daycare. He works all day. Sometimes he needs a break, so he's going to start off right off the bat here and say, I'm hooking up with the TV dinner. It's middle of the week. I need something easy. And then you can see here we have meatloaf. That's the main meal. He has a salad and his baked potato. Really hearty comfort food there, right? Then we have chicken breast, asparagus, and breadsticks. Soup sandwiches, salad, so that's like kind of a deli easy cook night. Sloppy joes and broccoli, easy cook night. Mexican night, like maybe not Taco Monday, but like a Taco Tuesday on a Monday. And then we have the standard spaghetti, salad, breadsticks. So this is what he's projected. So this is his 7-day plan that he's going to project here for himself. The reason we showed the dinner here, it's much more broad of a topic in terms of the food that you eat, whereas breakfast and lunches are probably more predictable. Having a sandwich for lunch or leftovers, or breakfast, people eat yogurts and bars and cottage cheese and toast and maybe bananas. You know, smoothies are certainly more popular these days, but you generally don't eat as much different types of things. So it can be very easy to stock what you need in the house and pull off easy, quick things to eat. Like granola bars, you know, cereal, things like that. So I would tell you that in my budget, I don't do anything but what we have up here. You can see we got a little head on the price here when we'll get into how this price is established. But we're saying here that this meal planning forces the budgeter to map out how to stay within the established weekly goal. And we're going to say that it's $57.69 each week. You can see everything that was put in the grid above goes in this grid. And what's good about this, if you have an app for this, this is great. Or if you had like an Excel grid, you can sort or filter. And you can keep these pieces in here and you can keep filling this out again so you don't have to repeat the same thing. So you can see that we talked about, he had sloppy joes one night, meatloaf, and Mexican night, right? Well, all of these in his case, he's going to make them with ground beef. So now he needs a pound for each meal, and he says I'm going to get 2 meals out of that, right? Actually, this is probably more like 3 meals. So he's using a pound of each meat for each meal. Now he's got some things that on his checklist as well that he already has. And again, this is why you keep a running total. So he has soup. Now, he can use this soup for one of his other meal plans. He doesn't need this food. So again, you can see how this grid works. Now you can see lettuce, loaf. Here's his TV dinner he talked about. How many meals you're going to get out of it. So, for example, if you know that I have a pre-mixed bag of lettuce and Jasper's son doesn't like salad. Well, Jasper's going to get 4 salads out on his own. So he knows, again, that when he's going to the store, he doesn't need to buy it. Or he can say, oh, I'm going to have 2 salads this week. Through this lettuce, if it's packaged up nicely, I'll get 2 weeks of shelf life, and I don't need to order it for a while. Mashed potatoes. So he does not have potatoes. He wants mashed potatoes, so he's going to have to buy a couple of them for 1 meal. So you can see, obviously, how this grid works. Okay, so the next step leads to how much things are going to cost based on what you need. From this grid up here, you can certainly add a column of cost. So what we're saying here was just showing you a different view of this, so it's a little easier to read. So this is an extension. So if he has amount, so again, this is where the food part comes in. You typically know what things cost that you pay for them, and you always think on the high side. So if you know that you can get ground turkey for $2.58 a pound and a 4-pack of those, so 4 pounds total at Costco, it's pretty predictable. It's pretty consistent price. So you want to think on the high end of the things you pay for. If you're also, let's say, at a Kroger or an Albertsons or something, and then you know that you've been paying $3.49 for ground beef, but you know that was on sale, and the average price was $4.50. In general, what you want to do is say, I'm paying really $13.50. And if it comes under that and it's on sale, that's just a bonus. So in our sample here, we just said, you know, that 3 pounds equals $10. So it's $3.33 a pound. These are all totals that he is used to, and this is when I talk about getting used to things, because you keep going back over and over again. So again, that just allows him to see what he needs for this particular week based on what he has in his fridge and what he needs to buy. So in the above table, the total week comes to $21.84. And you can see here, many states tax food for consumption on premises, but not for food sold off premises. So what's taxed is different from place to place. So you can see here that based on the number up here we had, you can see 57.69. At 57.69 less 21.84 leaves the 35.85 for the week. And so that's where the breakfast and the lunch meal will come into play. Now again, we only showed the dinner. If you wanted to blow this out and have breakfast and lunch, that's great, and he can map it out that way. There's no problem with that. Either way, whether you show it here and mapped out or not, that's what's left over, because you need to have food for those particular meals. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to stop at this point, and we're going to get to the next video on unit pricing. So at this point, this has been a pretty simple exercise. You just, again, like on anything of our upfront budgeting, you have to go do the work. This is good information, and we will get into other ways of understanding what you're going to pay for and the best ways to pay for it when you need to actually eat the food as we get into unit pricing. So thanks for joining, and we will see you in the next video.